We're here to talk about a proposal that was brought to the commission on July 1st regarding jail operational costs.
Yes.
Press here, so perhaps you could summarize your proposal.
Well, and I'll let Chief or the Undersheriff jump in any time. One of the concerns I've seen over the years with the budget is that there are circumstances that we don't control and are non-debatable budget issues. And every year we talk about budget back and forth, and the sheriff's budget went up, and we had to pay for this, and the sheriff's budget went up. Well, they're non-debatable issues, many of those. And as we look through there, we just felt like, why debate over a non-debatable issue? It always makes our budget look like it's going up, when in fact, medical costs and those things do go up. And so we outlined those things in this proposal view of our concerns on how the bottom line budget affects this. And you just document and send it over as a proposal to take care of having to not debate over non-debatable issues.
Did you outline the detail of the proposal for the press and for the people in the room?
Well, there's a number of areas in here that I'm sitting to read it, but Jim, do you want to add anything on there as far as how do you want to explain? There's a lot of sections just without reading it.
No, I'll cover whatever questions they might have, but it's simply, I think, Sheriff
No,
stated.
I'm asking for a summary of the proposals.
Well, if this is something we want to move forward on, then we would go back and actually provide a brief with exact detail numbers, exact bar lines, exact everything we want. But this was a theoretical, because obviously we threw some things out there that, what is non-debatable in the total amount of the budget, what actually falls under non-debatable. Some of those may actually fall under non-debatable, but they might be also attributed to wage and benefit issues. There's a couple that might commingle across the board. We haven't gone to that detail. The proposal is simply this. In talking with our entire command staff, and after nearly a decade of doing this myself, and talking with at least 2 other previous sheriffs who had to deal with this issue, because why are we even arguing over things that you don't need to argue about? I mean, and the way I look at it, and we talked with WASPIC, and we talked with all of our Washington State Sheriff's Association partners, and we've been meeting with jail chiefs, a lot of research. And in light of what's coming down in the next 3 to 5 years regarding county jails, and I know you folks have done it with your peer groups at the board levels, whether it's federal mandates coming down related to PREA, transgender issues and inmate housing facilities for transgender folks, the medical issues and the cost of medical issues, whether it's ACA or something new, depending on what happens in November, or another hybrid of the ACA. In light of the governor's proposal, which is not necessarily dead yet, but may be resurrected, which is the releasing inmates back out into the public, to release overcrowding in the prisons, which each county would have to deal with those issues. There are a lot of things, mental health issues that are coming down, facing county jails and inmates. Much of this falls under the care portion of operating a jail, not necessarily the staffing, the training. This is, how do you deal with your inmate population, the classification needs of those inmate populations. And I just see that instead of going in and trying to argue what those non-debatable costs will be, we project one set of numbers and we're budgeted a far lower set of numbers. And then we go back and forth through the entire year trying to find out what that landing point is. And there's a lot of contentious and I don't want to say just frustrating information, and the public trying to absorb all this. It doesn't serve it well. I'm trying to find a way to streamline this on behalf of the sheriff's office. So when we put our budget together in the preliminary phases, we're talking about wages, we're talking about benefits, we're talking about training, we're talking about equipment. But then the rest of that budget, the Board of County Commissioners could maintain and fund as they see appropriate. And then we would continue to monitor those bills as they come in to ensure that if inmate A was treated medically, pharmaceutically, mentally, under a professional services contract, that bill was verified that they did receive those services, and we send it over. Then we don't have to debate that portion of the budget. Is done, and you folks can help manage that high liability issue that we're faced with every time. And that's the gist of the proposal. The details, as you asked, Commissioner, if you're interested in working out the details, would be more than willing to sit down. summaries, details, and
Summaries, not detailed, in my
Well,
opinion.
the last summary I gave on alternatives was 3-page summary that had details and apparently that didn't cut mustard, so I'm not sure what I need to provide.
Well, I'll start off. I think I appreciate having this frank discussion about this. I think that's what we need to do more of. I think on the commission level, we after 11 and a half years here, not running again, I think I can speak very frankly, that I think the relationship between the sheriff's office and the commissioners is not as good as it used to be. Okay? And I think there's a lot of value in identifying those, what you call non-debatable, what the public might call their costs that have to be paid. I mean, it's right. Non-debatable means that there's no, you pay it when it happens. You got to take the guy to the hospital, he has a heart attack in the cell, you've got to take him to Mason General, and you got to get it done. And so those kinds of things, I think everybody has to understand are unforeseen costs that just have to be paid. And I think that more that we realize that they're going up helps the public understand that as we get more mandates from the feds or from the state to this costs more money. But number 5 on here was about the alternative sentencing programs, and that wasn't brought up. But I think there's still some real value in looking at that to try to help reduce our jail population. And I hope we can come to some agreement on alternative sentencing, because I think it's something that everybody else is looking at and doing. And if it's structured right, we could save some money.
We've briefed on that numerous times, and we've got documentation for it. The other one is a concern for us, and quite frankly, I mean, this is our 10th year of doing this, and every year we go through this tremendously harmful bloodletting every year over this budget. And the bottom line of it is I hear out there, well, the sheriff's got another record-setting budget. You look through that and break that down, and you look through this record-setting budget, it is those things that we have to pay for. We don't get to tell somebody, sorry, we're not taking the hospital. None of us have any way to be able to predict who's going to be sick and how much it's going to cost. And then when we have to come back in and ask, well, the sheriff's asking again. These again are the non-debatable things, and quite frankly, I don't think sometimes a lot of people in the public realize, because it's not their job to realize it, but they realize the amount of medical costs that we, as the public, are assuming to cover these costs in the jail. And when they see these costs and the sheriff saying, well, another record-setting budget, this is what's causing the record-setting budget. And that's why we say if we can just get that off the table, we'll send it over and just let somebody else pay it if they don't. If it's not believable what we're spending, but we have to pay it.
What were the results? I know we funded a nurse, right?
Mm-hmm. We increased the nursing hours.
Increase the nursing hours. That's what's been. If you have any idea what the result of that has been, has it helped to reduce medical costs?
It actually has increased the pharmaceutical and the transports, because when they're there, they will have people go out. What has helped to mitigate and lower the costs of the medical has been the classification of inmates, internal systems, and working with the hospital on medical coverage and the booking systems that we put in place.
So just increased regulation.
So we paid like 12 out of 270,000 budgeted on medical this year. But the nursing was one of the things last year, between the almost 300,000 in outsourcing that wasn't budgeted, or that we didn't get for a supplemental, and almost 100,000 in nursing, because we said the rates went up 10,000 a month because we went to a 10-hour day instead of 8. We never got that, and those were things because we were bottom line last year that we used unused wages and positions that we were trying to fill but didn't fill to cover that, and then we were, lambasted the public on that.
Commissioner, one way to look at it is though the nursing costs went up, the medical costs went down. So there was a trade-off. By having a nurse on site, many of those things get triaged the way they're supposed to be dealt with,
and not done.
Instead of incurring the ambulance ride or the overtime.
That was the theory, but it didn't work out that way.
No, it has worked out that way.
You said it went up.
Nursing costs.
Nursing
Nursing
went
costs
up,
overall.
medical
They're
as
almost
in
300,000 a year now instead of 200,000.
Sorry, I
The other thing
hear
to
that.
remember is that, you know, we're, many of these people, we have increased number of people coming into jail, so your costs go up. And then, it's just so many of these things, that food costs go up, we can't control those things. And every year, it looks like the sheriff's budget is doing these astronomical things that the sheriff's asking for, when in fact, it's not. It's those things in the budget are things that go up, we didn't create that.
And I think the public has to understand that, but one of the things that I think you have done a better job at is also identifying other sources that might pay for inmates, and not, you know, and Tom worked at that very hard, trying
He
to
did.
identify those individuals that were on public assistance or.
And classifying the inmates before they go in if they have something major. And we've been working diligently with the hospital. They've also been
Yeah.
wonderful about it. If someone is on Medicaid, to help us with that and refunding us if we have money, so we have paid.
That's
But we're
right.
also, the population of the inmates, keeping that at, you know, is also helping to manage the whole.
So what I worry about is if the Board of County Commissioners had the responsibility of some of those things, we wouldn't have the staff or the expertise to do it.
I guess the proposal here, Commissioner, to clarify that is that you would control the budget authority for the care of it. And we identified in our letter to you that amount, based on this year's budget, was $1.1 million and change, which was only at the 50% mark, but right now, as of June 30th, we were at 61%. So we're already starting to creep over as a total function of the budget. What we would say is, take those bars lines, you cover them, we just send the bills, you pay them. And then when it comes time for a supplemental, some point during the year, we don't need to come over and
Yeah,
debate it.
we
You'll
don't.
already know internally that that's an issue you need to deal with. So that was the theory, instead of coming back over and explaining why it costs.
Yeah. But there's some use in that public, but we still have the supplemental appropriation, which we can do.
But you would do it internally yourself.
And you
It's
would-
just that when we come over, we get criticized for, well, the sheriff's has got his hand out again. It's not that. When these costs go up, we don't have a
Yeah.
choice but to pay them. And in order to eliminate that, I just send you the bill and you can take care
I'll
of
tell you,
it.
I'm not going to criticize you because I could not do the job that you do. There was a proposal years ago when I was a commissioner, that the commissioner would take over operation of the jail. That would be the stupidest thing you could ever do as a commissioner, is take over the operation of a jail. Because it's tough to do.
Some have
It's
done
tough
it.
to do. Yeah, but I think they're crazy to do it. Because you don't have that world of experience. You don't have those people that are trained.
And every sheriff that's given that up is a sheriff with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
Every one of them, I know every one of them, and every one of them did the same thing. But they finally got out of the phase where when the sheriff comes in and asks for the funding for the jail, it's funded.
Well,
and they don't do
yeah,
that.
but I think we can be helpful in recognizing how tough this job is.
So what do you think of the proposal?
I think that we have to have a better relationship with the commission and the sheriff's office.
What do you think of the proposal?
I think if we had a better relationship with the commission and the sheriff's office, I think understood each other better, had each other in the room when we make proposals and decisions, and I think that's something I would say to any elected official. Be in the room when there's something that affects you, so we get a full story from your perspective. I think we would do better.
Would you be willing to take on the budget line items and the responsibility for paying outsourcing medical, dental, vision, pharmaceutical, nursing services, food, clothing, facility maintenance?
I think that what we're doing is we have to have a better relationship so that those things are understood. There's no doubt that they have to be paid.
So I'm hearing that. Is that fair to say?
I don't think that we should take it on. I think we don't have the expertise to do it.
Take it into consideration, but I don't see it as a realistic aspect either. I appreciate some of the, the comments of, we want to do what you guys have already done when it comes to paying off some of these costs with the unexpended wages. for me, I'm sorry, that's just called going through the budget process. You just ask for it to be moved, and if it seems realistic, it's moved. But, it's not that we have no interest in the programs proposals before. The last I heard, we had sent you back to talk to the judges, because he said the judges were not fully on board yet. And we were waiting for that to come back. I'm hoping that that's moving forward, that that's not dead, because I think we have that scheduled to even talk about in a supplemental for paying for it. Because
We did do that, and as I said, the judges were in favor.
We're all
We wanted another
okay.
great thing to assure that the judges were in favor.
The last one
So,
was-
I think it's scheduled for our budget.
Are you talking about alternative sentences?
Yes.
Commissioner,
Yes, it's scheduled for our budget briefing so we can fund it to make it happen, because I thought it was an incredibly great idea, and I think the other commissioners did as well. We didn't let it just die on this end, at least.
I just don't want to see things going up, and the sheriff's begging for more money, and his budget's gone up at an astronomical function and stuff, when the fact of the matter is, it's gone up by costs that are driven other than, it's not something that we do, but always, well, the sheriff's got this record-setting budget. Each year, it's going to go up, and I'm tired of arguing about it as well as previous sheriffs.
Well, I know that every one of the budget supplemental requests that had to do with medical care, every time I voted yes, and every time I said, these are functions of the jail that can't be controlled. So I don't know where that criticism is coming from, because I've said it every time, 3 times I've approved a supplemental budget request for medical costs. And every time I said, these are things that we are obligated to pay for, and I support the request.
And I know I've never voted no on one.
You know, one thing, just a suggestion, maybe one thing that would help is if the board, if we received and the board paid these costs on a regular basis. Because what happens is outsourcing the bill, it grows and grows. You know, it's an account payable. That's all, it's account payable. And when we have accounts payable, I like to see them paid as quickly as possible. When they build up, then we have a larger obligation. And it becomes, oh my gosh, yeah, we're going up $500,000, we gotta pay $1 million. If we paid quarterly, or if we paid every 2 months, whatever, the accountants can figure out a way to keep our balances lower, I think it would, first probably make the vendor feel pretty good, he'd be paid on time, but also it would lessen the blow, lessen the impact.
We actually,
Because they're regular, they're occurred every month, but we wait and wait and wait, and then all of a sudden we have
We
something
wrote in
else.
here is, you know, the budget cuts off at a certain time, and we have to estimate those for the end of the next year. And as you know, and no discredit, because you were actually the one that said, no, I was here for that, and remember, we had come in at one point and said, we need this much more money, it was a big thing, the sheriff wants more money in the paper again, you know, it's back to the sheriff. And you said, well, let's wait till the end of the year, you come back in and ask again, and we did, and as soon as we came back in, well, the sheriff's asking for, it was money that had to be paid out, and you remember having a conversation with the undersheriff on that. It just looks so false out there in the public as to, that we're coming in with our hand out again, and it are those things, the non-avails, they have to be paid. And we do our best to estimate theirs. There's no way that we can tell right now, or going into September, what that bill's gonna be.
Maybe, and I want to hear what the other commissioners want to say about this. Maybe that we have a fund that we pay every month into for non-debatable or these necessary expenses, and it sits there. So that it's a regular expenditure, and we keep a balance. Accrue it. So the public understands that these are ongoing costs. They happen every month, they happen every day, they happen every week. But by waiting and waiting to the end of the year for this large bill to be paid, I think it makes the vendors unhappy, it makes the public unhappy.
It puts us behind every time.
Push you behind. You gotta put gas in your car every day, every week. You know, you can't wait till pay that bill.
Well,
It's pretty much what we're
Commissioner,
proposing.
we ask for those, then as soon as we get them, we even have financial services that does special runs and puts them in after the deadline. So if we receive it, it's taken care of. And we receive medical things every day that we work on. It's just what you were speaking to earlier, is that we need to accrue what we know we're going to get that we haven't received yet.
So we know that we've obligated those dollars.
Mhm.
I think it would be useful that we do it that way, so we're all talking the same thing.
And Commissioner, whatever way to make this less contentious, educate the public on how the odd and unusual running of a jail, which is not like any other typical business, because hour to hour, day to day, it changes based on what inmate you take into custody, and based on what litigation all of a sudden you just received for X, Y, or Z issue. Whatever way we can remove the contentious nature of that, because it is not going to get cheaper, it's only going to get worse in the next 3 to 5 years. There's no way around. Outsourcing is going to continue. There is no way to bring back all the inmates. That's a function that's going to have to remain a portion of this collective thought for future planning. We don't get out of that unless you cap who comes into the facility.
Well, on our agenda for, coming up for tomorrow, right? We'll have a night meeting, and at the end of our meeting, we don't do it every meeting, but every other meeting, we will pay our bills, our salaries, our outstanding bills. We'll have a line item that says accumulated costs for the county so far. Why couldn't we, at each of those meetings, have a line item for obligations for non-debatable?
So you're saying that because it cannot be budgeted accurately, because we don't really know from month to month, that would be the way to deal with it?
Yeah, but at least each month we have a category, and I'm looking for budget manager. I don't call him Frank, I call him Professor, which is good with numbers. But Professor, would there be a way that we could obligate each month these non-debatable costs? Or each 2 weeks, whatever the time period is, but not longer than
It would
that?
need to be based on what actually occurred the prior month.
Mhm.
So we would need to know the numbers of inmates that are outsourced and how much the costs were, so we could accrue for those.
Right.
But we would need all of that information in order to capture that data correctly. But that goes through just the end of the month. There's no way to capture what it will be
No.
for the end of this month,
Could,
for instance.
Trace,
I've already estimated.
could we do that? Some kind of obligation, so the public we'll read it each month, so the public is understanding that these are obligations that they have as a citizen for us to keep these people in our
So
facility.
pretty much what we're proposing, we would just send it over and you would have the information, you could just say, here it is and pay for it, rather than us come over and say, this is the bill, well, the sheriff wants more money again. It would just be there, we would just send it over to you, it's there, and you can pay the bill, and that's pretty much what we're proposing.
If it's done on a regular basis and there's the ability to ask, to go through our financial system, it's just a suggestion I have, I think it would work.
Well, I think this has all been borne out. Part of the problems we've always had is when we went to the new budgeting system, this created, how do we now do these things? And this is what we're ending up with. Under that theory, it still comes down to the last 2 weeks of the year, if the assumption is payrolls and other bills are run during those timeframes. We're going to receive bills from the 15th of December through the 30th, and those things don't come into the next year. And if we're in contracts with other facilities who may not get their bills to us in a timely manner, i.e. months later, we're now obligating this year's dollars for last year's expenses because we couldn't get the dollars. And we already took a hit on that this last year, sitting down with the state auditors on accountability issues. No fault of our own on those issues.
This is obviously an issue that we try to take care of through the 13th month process, and apparently it's not always effective.
Well, it can only be handled in 13th month if they have money left in their budget authority. If there's no money left in their budget authority, you can't do a supplemental in the next budget year for a prior budget year. So if there's money left in 13th month, then yes, all bills are paid out of the, we'll say 2016 budget in January 2017. If those bills aren't received until March, when 13th month has been closed, then the finance manager
Sometimes a
accrues them
function
back.
of the relationship with the vendor, isn't it?
That is a function, and I had suggested to someone today that a letter go from our prosecuting attorney's office to specifically Ms. Qualley, telling them that they had X amount of days to get a bill in. Right now, May and June have not been paid. To my knowledge, there isn't a bill received yet.
What if
Well, I
There's
think I've
language in the
spoken
contract
to
that would,
the commission just this morning about that we asked.
Right, I know, we're trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to fix the problem.
Well,
We know the problem.
but the other thing that happened, Commissioner, is that we just received pharmaceutical bills from the Squally for October, November, December a month ago.
Okay.
And we didn't even know those were out there. So
Right, okay,
we-
so we know the problem.
What I'm saying is this, is that, yes, there is a vendor letter and that's trying to go over to expedite this. But the unintended consequence is, Ms. Squally could say, well, thank you very much for your time, we're not interested in your inmates. And now we're right back to square one with a bunch of inmates, we got nowhere to go.
That's right.
That's one of the problems we run. I mean, we are, we're beholden to these other contract agencies right now and their timelines. We can try and expedite it, and I think that's a reasonable approach, just to explain, you know, for budgeting purposes, this is important. But if they finally say, well, thanks for your time, we have other people who take these beds, we're not worried about it, and we lose those beds, we still have 30 inmates we got a
No place
problem
to
with. So, you know, that's one of those ones where you step lightly through this process, and that's one of the dilemmas we have, is trying to step lightly, and working well with these parent agencies. And so, you know, I'm concerned about the bills that accrued, and that goes back to the base argument. Do you put the money up front into the care and custody, which projects clear out into March what those expenditures are going to trickle in at, so we can meet the rules to pay them by the 13th month close of March timeframe. But we've been doing it as a matching function at the end of the year, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of bills flow in, and now we've got problems, you know, pages outlined
We've been going through
before.
this
We also
Sign
asked
years
about the
and before.
$230,000 for
Well,
CBA
could-
before the year ended. and we
Could our,
didn't get it.
could the financial people and the 3 or 4 people here that deal with this get together and give us a proposal how to facilitate it?
All we can do is make the estimate on what we think it's gonna cost based on what we've had in the past and have the money readily available. If it's not just sitting there ready for us, by the time we come over and ask and start the process again, we're months and months and months behind again, and then we go into the next year and we're back to the same thing during budget time on this whole money issue. It's been going on for, long before I was sheriff, this has been going on.
But maybe to take care of your concern about the public saying, oh, well, there's the sheriff, he wants more money, is could we do that on some kind of a monthly basis so that we keep more current on it, and the public is more informed
We've estimated it.
each month instead of, maybe that's all I can throw out, but
We'll ask the appropriate interested parties on any ideas, and I think that's one that's either you do it in July or you do it right before, because if we're establishing baselines for the next year's budget, if you do that supplemental before the baseline closes, then you know what your new baseline is going to be, because all things given, our jail population is not going down. It will remain full forevermore. I mean, the jail will be at capacity from here on out. And so I think if you do that, you establish a new baseline under the baseline budget. So if you come in with that supplemental in the last 2 weeks in June, and you base that for the ending year, you're starting at a much closer actual figure for the cost of doing business than you would if you come back for this supplemental and keep perpetuating the problem.
Because we paid almost $700,000 last year and got a $300,000 supplemental at the end of the year. This year, we've already paid $400,000, we're estimating $600,000. It's not a matter of getting the figures and estimates of what we think we're gonna pay. It's a matter of getting the proper budget authority so that we're not coming back. In the 14 year, we had a CBA that was done mid-year, and we have a retro to pay that we didn't get the budget amendment for, so we had to use 15, and the state auditors were asking about that, and they said there wasn't anything we could do. Not only did we not get the appropriate budget amendment that we asked for, but also we had bills that came in after the 13th month cutoff. So the logistics are also a factor.
I think, and this comes down to, these are the things when you go to a different budgeting system and you place restrictions on what was, in most cases, able to be accommodated through unused wages and benefits by division and moving them around. We were able to take care of many of these things.
I don't understand why that's an issue, I truly don't.
Well, for example, last year we used nearly
No, I understand the need
$230,000
to.
from patrol.
I understand the need to, but I don't understand why it's an issue to do the budget, what do you call that? Form?
Budget transfer forms?
The budget transfer form, why is that an issue?
We've tried and it has caused, the mere reason we're sitting here is the amount of contention and the amount of arguments that the sheriff and others, that's what I'm saying.
You came and asked for a budget transfer from
Well,
one
we
side
did-
to the other.
We did that with voting and how'd that work out?
You never asked for,
Happened-
no, I'm sorry, but you didn't ask for a transfer. The first time you came in for voting, you asked for straight cash. Then we asked you and requested that you take it out of voting, if you think about it at the time, and that was not good at that moment, because you guys had other funds you were looking to do from voting.
Well, the voting had to cover the labor costs for running
Couldn't
a vote
do that.
operation.
No, we're just
By
talking
appointment.
about, we had given options.
I'm saying the examples,
Okay,
is
well-
it allow, the discretionary ability for the sheriff to just move money as the
Okay, so-
mission dictates.
I understand you don't want to have you don't want to have the discretion taken away from you, and it's a disagreement, at least between Commissioner Nedlin and I and in your office. But if you're in a situation right now where you'd like to transfer unused wages over to pay for the outsourcing bills, why have you not done that?
Well, then we wouldn't be able to hire those positions that are open, because we don't have any funding for them.
Except for the fact that we are now 6 months into a year, so there would at least be 6 months. If they were to start tomorrow, there's 6 months of unused wages.
But we could certainly do that.
There's not that much, it's not that much, Commissioner. We're not talking about the amount of money that those unused lines, because some people have worked in those for a period of time, and the amount that we're talking about is not, I gave you mine, is not even close to being enough. But what we have is our operating budget of almost 14 million with 110 staff members has been adopted differently than the roads of 57 and 8 million operating, and not admin and maintenance and all those things being done as separate divisions. Our budget, on the other hand, was adopted by division and by salary and benefits and operating separate. And even when we asked for budget transfers to be done on, like the courthouse security, it took a long time for that to happen. The bills that came for the courthouse security weren't paid in a timely way because of the budget transfers. But that's just one example. But we have not enough money in this unused wages and benefits to cover the $90,000 a month in outsourcing that we're still receiving for May, June, July, and through the end of the year.
So
Madam Chair, from the auditor's office, she indicated that's not accurate.
All bills for courthouse security have been paid and paid as soon as we receive them.
Are we talking about bills or transfers of budget authority? I think there's the two different
Yeah,
differences.
yeah.
Bills,
They've all
bills,
been taken care of.
yeah, we're talking transfer of.
We're talking about the transfer
We're
of
not
budget.
talking the
from-
bills.
And
That's
even
not-
the new budget transfer form that format you're going to adopt at tomorrow night's meeting does not allow for, because we talked about that when that was first proposed.
So, okay, so can I summarize it, hopefully, just to figure out?
Because of the
Can I
magnitude
summarize
of
it,
what it
your
is.
reticence to do it is because the sheriff's budget is in multiple divisions?
Our reticence is basically to create a partnership between the county commissioners for the liability issues assumed in that deal for the care portion that we always have.
No, I'm back to my question from the first question ago, or last question.
Okay, all right.
Your reticence to use the budget transfer request form is because, and what I heard Chief Eric say was because your budget's broken up into multiple divisions. Is that?
There's no reticence as far as filling forms out, but we tried to do that with already several, but there's no reticence in filling forms out at all. It's just a matter of how much capacity you have in those unfilled positions for the amount of liability you have
Okay,
to pay.
so if there's a portion of it that could be paid.
But we don't know how soon they're going to be filled, but there's a portion that,
Yes,
but it's nominal, it's not going to make up the $600,000 delta.
Well, no, we knew that, we just,
so,
When this whole process changed, we were told wages for wages, this for this, and that was it. And that's what turns out
and you were
it's not
told with the
correct.
option to transfer over when
Yes.
you need a rose, that's what you were
And we-
told, the sheriff. I don't know why we have a
You've
misunderstanding.
never had any problems with it in the past until this.
I guess here's the confusion, is
Exactly, that's what I'm
we
trying to
had
say.
used unused wages and benefits to pay bills, and we did it internally. And then we now come over and ask permission to do the exact same thing, but here's the rub. Politically, we're accused of spending patrol dollars for non-patrol money and taking patrol wages to pay for other issues like jail operations. And so there's a political component to this. Is
And
that
that's the piece that's very difficult for us to have a serious conversation about, because I could say many, many inflammatory things here at a table like this without being able to substantiate it. And so I'd like to just kind of walk us through the processes we had set up and try to talk about how those can be.
Everything that we're asking for and have been asking for, you've not been denied transfer or anything else. The only thing we're asking for is that unexpended wages that you guys have done in the past, have done right with. You've done the right things each time you spent that money, that it goes through the budget process, that we look at it as a commission, that we do our job, and if it's gonna be expended other than wages, that it goes through a budget process with us where we have a communication with the public of where that money goes. Then we sign on and it transfers over. Up to this point, you've not asked for that.
I just looked at last night, the reports I sent out, there's only 90,000 in unexpended. Go ahead, Chief.
The problem is we ask and you
Yes.
don't transfer.
We-
That's been going on, I mean, I've been here a long time. And we've been doing what you've told. We've come over and we've said, we've got this much money, we need a supplemental. And it's not happening.
You gotta pay, that's what
I
said.
don't know what,
I
I don't know what their
Yeah.
situations
And
were,
Tim has
so
said that previous
I'm hearing
meeting.
this, but I don't have
They
proof.
You pay it when
Anything
you
when
come
that
in.
happened? 'Cause
Yeah, maybe one.
we don't have anybody, they've even said themselves they have not done one of the requests to move the funds over. Has it happened that you know of that they don't?
How much last year, 200?
No,
No, that was the supplemental request, we're talking about the
That's
budget
what I'm talking
transfers.
about.
No.
I'm talking
Budget
supplementals,
transfers.
transfers, whatever.
Well, they're
No,
not-
two totally different
Okay, so
things.
they're two totally, but they're still not happening.
The budget transfer hasn't been requested,
The
the
bottom
budget
line.
supplementals have been approached one by one, and to say they're not,
We'll
did not.
we'll come
get
back
a
with specific
supplemental.
examples. We have those lists, and we'll come back with the specific examples. Coming back to the alternatives program, I provided a 3-page brief. We provided all the details that we have available at this time. We did the research with the judges, both Judge Meadows, her staff, the other 2 judges. As to form, as proposed, they were in agreement, but they also stated there are certain details related to each court that has to be worked out. Those details can be worked out prior to, but the ask that we had before you, and I think civil service can back us on this, is that the amount of time it takes to actually go out, advertise for the test, set the test up, get the list certified, come back and be able to do the hiring, backgrounding, polygraph, the whole process is a 6-month adventure at best. So what we were asking for, because it's required by civil service, is to have the positions authorized
And
and then go, and
so you
then
can work on it.
the fallback would be if the details between the courts and the sheriff's office and the other programs involved became too insurmountable to actually affect as intended, we could rescind, not pay a dime on it, close it out with civil service, it's a done deal. It's not that we're
But what
obligating
ends
the
up
money.
happening is that it is the baseline that you talked about just earlier. So that budget supplemental ends up being the baseline that you refer to, even though it was a program that did not occur. And that's the very same discussion we had.
Which during the budget hearing, you can come back and say, we attempted to have this put in place. They didn't do it, so your preliminary budget baseline is here based on that issue. I mean, this is what we're being asked to do.
And I appreciate that, but I gotta tell you, it's funny, because we've talked about the political aspect. I remember my first year at the Chamber of Commerce, going in there as a commission, we were talking about whether it was going to be a 7% increase in the budget, total budget, or a 14% increase in the total budget. I showed up for the Chamber of Commerce, and they were putting together a letter, because they were being told we were cutting. Because from what was asked was 21, and we were giving 14, and that was being put out as a cut. Politically, that same thing you just mentioned would be, we're cutting the budget. So that does, I guess it does count sometimes on both sides on this when we're dealing with it. But I'm hoping that everything we just talked about, I thought, was on the agenda for the supplemental to start to put into place. Now, of course, if we don't have the pieces in place, it probably won't happen, but that's supposed to happen in how long?
There's a hearing scheduled for next week, well, a briefing scheduled for next week, and,
Commissioner Jeffries is gone, remember we talked about moving that to next week.
or the following week when Commissioner Jeffries is, and then there would be a public hearing before the end of August.
And what is going to be on that for the sheriff's office?
It'll be
Because we've
September,
talked before, things.
You've got time in there to publish.
Yeah.
Well, I think this thing could be, it's unbelievable that we can't work this out. I think the politics of it, forget it. It's a public policy. We gotta have the public policy that's best for the citizens of the county. And even on the tomorrow night's agenda is this approval of transfers, department transfers. It only allows you an annual transfer up to $50,000. I propose that we do a percentage of the
Yes, so
budget.
it's fair for all departments.
Because the problem with it is $50,000 in a $14 million
Exactly.
budget, his budget does when you get down to it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
percentage-wise, Commissioner, you brought that up when this first was proposed over a month ago.
Right.
That very thing, and we had other elected officials, because our budget, just for admin, it's like, we have, for us to have the same percentage as the other electeds, it'd be about 300,000.
You got 110 employees, right?
I wish you would have been here for the conversation when the staff was looking for some input on that very.
And I gave you some input on it. I
No,
can't be
we
here
needed-
24/7, Commissioner.
You
I'm
can
not
be
gonna sit-
here, you can be here at a budget briefing, and we were looking for specific percentages and trying to come up with things, and we weren't here
And
to
that's the reason you didn't.
offer.
Yeah,
that's
I
the
wanna
reason you
re- I
didn't
wanna
You
do
were
it.
not
That
here to
wasn't
offer
I
any.
want to remind everybody though,
This was your request.
but I want to remind everybody that 50,000 is not the limit. That's just the limit without discussion or doing a paper request of transferring funds. That's where they can transfer without discussing it with us or anybody else to be able to take care of bills or whatever.
But-
They still can do a larger transfer.
That, Commissioner, that is only, right now, we have unfilled, I was looking at Chief's report I was sending out last night. We're talking, if we didn't fill those positions, then it's like 90,000. It's not enough. We have more encumbered bills for our outsourcing than we would have in unfilled wages or benefits to transfer money. It's
Still
it's not that, it's not gonna even close to
Doesn't mean you don't
something.
do what you do have.
Yeah.
So we need to move on, and we have,
You guys question?
11:30, just so you know, that we have an 11:30 schedule, we're 15 minutes behind. Commissioner Sheldon needs to leave at 5 minutes to noon, so I'd like him to have some time with the EDC, so let's do
Could I just take one clarification? I heard you say that the reason for this process is so that the citizens will have a better accountability that you're doing your job to make sure that the money's being spent right. To me, I see it as an extra step of government, another extra step of bureaucracy, because when we put out our information as to how we spend it, we're going to be accountable to the citizens, and the sheriff will not be reelected if he's not being accountable, yet now we put another cog in the system and clogged it up and made it slower. I don't understand the logic behind that.
We have a two process of it. You account for it when you ask for it, and you account for it after you spend it. To account for it when you ask for it and not spend it what you're asking for, that has to come back to tell people how you're going to spend it again. You may look at it as an extra cog, but it's actually that simple. When people expect to know where it's going, when it goes into the budget, if it's not going to go there, they expect to know where it's going to go.
And this bi-divisional bifold was applied to all elected officials in all departments or just the sheriff?
Yes, everyone.
Okay, so,
Why don't you do it just done as a sheriff?
That's what the resolution states.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you.